Hi everyone, welcome to the most comprehensive tutorial for Voiceflow. I'm Akshat Bahati and we are going to build an amazing Voiceflow agent from scratch. This is what the lesson plan looks like. We're going to talk about taking inputs, displaying data, building a knowledge base, doing a lot of advanced development stuff, that's API, functions, etc. And then finally launching and publishing an agent. Now, if you don't know Voiceflow is one of the best tools out there to complete AI agents from scratch, right? Which can be used with voice, chat, everything else, right? So let's get started and start building this right now. This is what we're going to actually end up building, right? We're going to build something in Travel so that it gives you an example when we go from scratch to end. But before that, let's get started. Here is where you will end up when you're talking about Voiceflow, right? This is the first page and you can see these are my agents. You will come here and click on new agent. As soon as you click on new agent, you get started with the important info that you have to give about your agent. I'm just going to say YT demo complete 2025 and this is going to be the complete demo. I can select a couple of pre-made templates, but I'm just going to use the basic template to get started with. I am also not going to select any other language other than English because that's what we are going to do this whole thing in. We're going to get started. In case I want to start building a knowledge base right now, I can technically import a URL. I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to click on skip and get into the Voiceflow interface where we are actually going to build this stuff. Okay. So now, when you come here, there's a lot of stuff on the left hand side and I'm going to walk you through each one of them. But first things first, we're just going to click on workflows and get to this specific workflow, which is simply created by default by Voiceflow. So this is a very basic workflow that they have created. I'm just going to delete this because I want to get started from scratch. Come to this part and this is what we call the starting block. This is where your agent will start. First things first, so we are going to get started on this block. First, we get to this block and then on the start block, you can see I can drag a line from here and select multiple blocks. We'll discuss each and every one of with you. So let's get started. Now this is the message block where you actually give output to your user. You have multiple options available here. As you can see, they have depreciated one of the old variables where you were able to use an AI block or something, and they have something else called prompt. So if you are using this in 2025, you have to make sure you use that. Now, if I click on test agent, nothing happens because there is nothing connected after the start block. Next, I'm going to click on talk and I'm going to bring message block out. And once I bring this here, I'm going to take this line and connect it here. Voiceflow just works like a drag and drop builder. So you are simply just like, you can just drag and drop stuff and connect it together. Now, this is going to be my welcome block. And I'm just going to write a message that I want to show to the user. Well, if you're on the channel for the first time, I'm Akshat Bahati. And well, very simply, I just want to plug this in that I'm launching my AI community today. And you can sign it up right now, right? This is literally just going live today. So that's it. My first member is me itself. So you get sign up, and if you're part of the first initial members, you get access to 2 months of free calls with me as many times as you want and ask any questions about any tool, AI, or randomly discuss stuff. So again, go ahead and see the link in the description. So if you're someone who wants to learn about AI with people who are super interested and get direct access of a lot of content from me, we are going to do a lot of workshops. Just go ahead and sign up. I would love to see you there. Let's come back to the tutorial. This is the message block that you should always use when you're talking to your users. So that means whenever you want to display some message, or let's say you are creating this for a client, you can say, hi, I am XYZ from Dr. Marketing or something like that. These are static messages. So this is something that you should use whenever you are trying to make sure that there is a standard message every time someone opens an agent. You don't need to use an AI block here because this is going to be static message, right? You would see this in a lot of agents. Whenever you start, you always get the first message there. Now again, we'll be using this block a lot of times, but again, this is one of the ways. Another option that you have here is called variants. So let's say I want to say, hi, welcome to Akshat Bahati YouTube channel. I can click on variants and add different options of my own content. What does that mean? That means in case someone is visiting my agent multiple times, like the customer support agent or a website lead generation agent, I want them to see multiple different options of this. I can say, hi, this is Akshat, like, and I can also add another one, right? Like, let's say, this is great tutorial, or like, again, I'm just doing this basics, like random stuff. But if I click on test your agent, I will get a different response every time. This is completely random. So you can see this is great tutorial or something like that. Now, in case you don't want to type this yourself, you can just come back here and click on variants and click on generate 1, 2, 3, 5 variants. That means it will automatically see your message and AI will go ahead and generate the 3, 5 different variants that you want to see. So let's say if I click on 3 variants, it will automatically create 3 different messages. This is great because your users don't feel that this is like a static agent. It's a better user experience thing, and you can also use like an if condition, like with something else. Again, we'll come to that, but just let's say right now we're going to have this variant so your users feel better when interacting with your agent and feel more interested. Awesome. Then we come to the next step. Let's say someone comes to your channel and you want to explain what you do. That's where we want to use the AI step. So here is prompt. We're going to take this and drop this here. As you can see, right now there's one default prompt created by Voiceflow, which is answering a question, right? We're going to create our own prompt. So whenever you want to create a prompt, click on create prompt and you'll get into your prompt building place. Now in this, I'm going to rename the prompt first of all, which is like 110% do it, because once you close this, again you have to go ahead and edit, and always better for use cases. So just write in this, you have a system and a user, and then you have multiple settings. We'll come to that. But let's say a system variable. Now this is like the system prompt that I want to make sure that the agent responds with certain understanding of what it is happening. Like this is where a bit of prompt engineering will be coming. If you want to learn more about prompt engineering in depth, apart from Voiceflow, I have a whole video on that, so just go ahead and click on the link somewhere here and you can go ahead and watch that. So let's say I want to create a persona here, right? When I say like a persona, I'm just saying like, AI should talk in a specific tone or in a specific format or something like that. So I'm just going to say, you are an AI assistant who knows everything about, right? And I'm just going to type that, right? And then I'm going to come back to the user part, which is also needed to tell the AI assistant on how to respond. So system is where we are just defining the base, like a personality to the agent, and then we're going to add user. So here we are going to write as a user, we're just going to say, you have a question from the user, and I will put last utterance, and I'll come back to that. You have a question from the user as last utterance. Ensure to reply in simple words and less than 2 sentences. Actually, I'll just add it in a second. We're just going to define like, just simply reply. We can also test this out, and I can say, who is Akshat Bharati? And I don't believe AI will know who is Akshat Bharati, because right now it's just going to hit the default haiku model and just describe on that, right? So Akshat Bharati is a young talent creator for his engaging videos, XYZ, and is particularly popular for his informative technical channel on YouTube. And is particularly popular for his informative, easy to understand. So again, I'm popular, guys. AI knows about me. Okay, perfect. But again, here are something that we can change here, right? So you can change the model that you're using. So instead of like, you can say haiku, or you want to change it into sonnet, or you want to change it into opus, you can choose different models. Most of the times, whenever I'm responding to the users, I prefer Claude 3.5 Sonnet, because the way Claude writes responses is much better compared to GPT-4o. Again, and it could be personal preference. And you can choose any model that you want. Again, O3 Min is something super popular and also super cheap. You can also use that one. We'll come to the JSON output and stuff later. We're not going to talk about this right now, but again, you can select any model that you want. Once you select the model, you also have to select the number of tokens it will take to process. If you are using AI for the first time, and like, you're building this agents and you don't know what tokens means, tokens just means the number of words. Let's say I make this 2000 tokens or something like that. This will probably mean a lot more conversation. For example, this particular response with my input and the output total is 20 tokens. So this was roughly around 8 tokens, and this whole thing is another 12 tokens. You can see that below on what does 8 plus 12 tokens is equal to 20 tokens. So that means we have used 20 tokens here to ask AI about this response. And obviously latency technically just means that this is the time it has taken for the AI to respond. As low as possible latency is great. Also in the tokens perspective, remember that whenever you're using Voiceflow, they give you a certain number of tokens that you're using. So every time you use the tokens, they get deducted from your plan. Just keep the 20 tokens. As we go ahead, you'll see that the token numbers might go up and down based on the response. If I say less than 1 sentence, you will see, let me run this again, we'll see that the number of tokens has technically increased because I've changed the model. So if I go back, I will be able to run this and get less number of tokens. Right, 17 tokens instead of 20, because the point is I just asked it to do 1 sentence. So the way you are outputting the content, the way you are inputting the content determines the number of tokens, right? And then again, I'm just going to switch this to Sonnet, and I'm just going to keep that running, and I'll get obviously 134 tokens and everything that's defined. Perfect. Then another option that you can see here is variables. You saw that, like, again, I input this last utterance by pressing this I input this by putting the left curly brace. Obviously, we're going to talk about that, but this is just a way to get variables that I have in Voiceflow. But again, obviously, right now I don't have any of this built, so I'm just going to close this and keep this here, right? Now, technically, I don't want to always keep making people ask, who is Akshat Bharati? So I want the users to ask a question, right? They should be able to ask a question. So then we come to the listen block. And in listen block, you have 3 options. We are going to talk about number 1, which is capture. Right? So take the capture block and put it here. Now, one of the most new things that people don't understand and they get a bit pissed on. You can't put anything after the capture block, right? So voice flow works on turn of conversation. Technically, what does that mean is as soon as someone has responded, there needs to be some process to give them an output or some kind of action that needs to happen. So every time that you enter the capture block, let's say even if I enter it here, I won't be able to enter this block after this. So I can input it in the middle, I can input it at the top, I can't enter it after that, and that's by design, right? So that means every time a user says something, you have to ensure either you respond or you go to other blocks and everything else. But at the end, you can't have a capture block and also another capture block right after that, right? But you can take another block and say, I want something else. That's how the whole process needs to work. But you can't in the same block enter it, and we're just going to connect this here and collect this part, right? And in this entity to capture, I'm just going to right now take entire user reply, and we'll come to that. Okay, the entities are different than user reply, and I'll explain you where. So capture last utterance, and this will save the whole utterance here and then respond with what Akshat does. Okay, so I'm just going to ask, what is Akshat famous for? Right, this seems super narcissistic, but right, let's say, like, again, Akshay is known for his entrepreneurial ventures and tech innovations, right? Again, and that's true. I do a lot of stuff, right? And then again, I'll explain all of this. What does this mean? But technically, it responded back into that. But obviously, after this, the chat again has ended, and this does not have any, right? This does not give me anything back. So what I'm going to do is, I can technically take this and connect this back, right? And as soon as I do this, let me just show you. You can either connect it to the block or you can connect it to the specific part. Let me bring this to the middle, and you can see I've just connected it to this particular block, not the whole thing, only this block. So if I go ahead and show this to you again, you have to connect it back to this particular step rather than this, or you can connect it to the whole block depending what you want. But if I do this, and technically I change like the prompt to a bit more and make it more focused on travel, right? I can come back here and say, who knows everything about travel in India, let's just say, or traveling in the world, let's just say that, and keep that, remove this, and I'm going to say remove all of this and come back to, like, I am a travel expert, ask me anything. I've done that, and then I can generate variants. So I can just come back here, generate 3 variants. We have the variants being generated. Then I can start by saying test your agent. Now I can ask it anything about travel, right? So top 3 travel places to go from US in less than $400, let's say, a random number, and then we'll go ahead and respond in the same format. Mexico, Canada, and Puerto Rico offer affordable and diverse travel experience within easy reach to the US. Again, this is a very simple example to get started with. But now I can go ahead and ask it, okay, give me itinerary for Mexico, right? And it will be able to go ahead and keep responding to me with all the information. And as you can see, this is just a loop. It will keep getting me the information that is required. So I can ask questions and go ahead. The response, as you see, is always in a single sentence. And again, that's up to you. You can make it 2 sentences, 3 sentences, 4 sentences, depends on the prompt. So if I come here and change the prompt, I can change anything that what I want. So I can make it 3 sentences, 4 sentences, or everything else. I will also show you how to add a conversation history and message pair. But let's come to that in a second. Perfect. Now let's come to another thing that we'll talk about, the other steps that we have, right? So let's start with image, which I think is one of my favorite steps because it displays very beautifully. Whenever you're talking to your users, you don't want them to just see text. You want to see images or something like that, right? So first option is you have an option to upload an image, and then another option is to link an image, right? So we are just going to take this, and then what I'm going to do is remove this part. I'm going to show you an option, right? So explain what Akshat does, and I can just simply always show an image, right? Again, which is obviously not what you're going to do in a real life scenario, but I just want to show you how does this get displayed. So let's come back here. I'm an expert in travel, ask me anything. Explain me about New Zealand, right? And I'm spelled completely wrong, and that's the beauty of AI. It can understand what you're talking about, and you get an image, right? Now this is great for if you want to showcase a product, if you want to showcase something, and go from there. This is not how you will actually use an image perspective, right? You'll actually have like an option, okay, what you want to showcase, and go from there. I'm going to show you another option on the link part in a second. Very simply, I want to have 3 options here. We come back to the listen tab, and you have buttons as an option, right? So let's take these buttons, and I'm just going to delete this, right? And I'm going to go to buttons and create a button. I'll tell you what all 3 things mean in a second. So let's say we have New Zealand, then we have another one with Mexico, and then we have another one as a button. Okay, now you have 3 buttons here, and what I can go ahead and ask the user is select like, I haven't probably asked me anything, or I can just go ahead and take a message block and say, bring this here, and just a second, drop this here and say, select a city you want to see. Once I do this, I can connect this, again, this beautiful line here, connect this back here, and then instead of this, I can just remove this, connect it back here. And then the best part is that, one thing, like, let me show this to you. If you're using this for the first time, this might get a bit complex. You can drag and drop blocks in and out, right? So you can drag and drop, and as whatever the last block that needs a connection point, you get a connection point here. But let's say I remove this, you can see this connection point is there. If I delete this also, you'll see a connection point created here. I can drop this again here and remove it as I want, right? So anything that I drag and drop becomes a separate block automatically, and that's one of the best beauties of Voiceflow. That I'm just going to take this, and I'm just going to take this step and drop this here. What I'm going to go ahead is click on test your agent, and technically I'll get 3 buttons as option, right? Select a city, and you can see these 3 beautiful buttons coming up with the names we have input. Now, obviously, these buttons are not connected, so if I click anything, nothing happens. The chat gets ended. That's obvious. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create 3 image blocks here, right? And I'm going to create, like, I'm just going to, I can go ahead and duplicate this. That's one of, like, so when you right click, you get multiple options here, right? So I can duplicate a particular block, and I'm going to duplicate it 3 times, and just have this. And just for, like, one thing about naming convention, when you are doing this, again, this is like 5-10 blocks, and I'm telling you it's easy to understand. Always keep renaming your blocks, because it's easy when you want to maintain stuff, right? And it's very important that you keep doing that as much as you want. I'm going to put this over, right? Perfect. So when I'm going to come here, again, I can come here, browse, and again upload a image about Mexico, right? And you will get a Mexico image, and then again I'll come here, and you can probably, like, I don't know if that's Mexico or not, don't judge me. I just googled something and got these images, and then you have a Rome image, okay? And then what I can do is I can connect each of these steps. Each of the buttons can be connected to a separate output, right? So I can connect this to New Zealand, and then I can connect this to Mexico, I can connect this to Rome, right? And then you get all these 3 things, right? So again, and as you can see, this is a block, right? So I can also say, come back and put this, the above image, about Rome, because it's not just the image thing, right? It's a block, right? And in that you can input as many things you want. You want to enter some logic, you want to enter some devs. Again, there are some restrictions, obviously, but you're just going to keep it here, right? So this is, again, from an input and output perspective. Let me showcase this to you. How does this look? So let's come back here, click on test agent, zoom out so you can see how this is working. I'm an expert in travel, ask me anything. Let's say I select Rome, or I select Mexico. The chart ends just with an image. Let's say I started again, right? And feel free to select a city, and I click on Rome, and we'll get the above images about Rome, right? So that's beautiful. Like, that's actually better compared to just getting a random image without any context, right? So that happens there, right? You get the input, and you can select as many as you want. This is one of the options of buttons, right? So you can select different kind of buttons. You can have them give different outputs. So let's say someone is coming to you as a customer support agent, right? So then you can have, like, what do you need help with, right? So instead of this, I can say, what do you need help with? Maybe I need, like, if it was an airline, I'd say I lost my bag, or I need to file a claim. And I can have multiple options that can trigger different kind of outputs, which is super important. A lot of times users don't want to keep entering text messages. We might believe, like, we are building this, people will talk in text. People are super lazy, right? So they want something that, okay, I just click a button and I go to the next step and I'm happy, right? So let's make people happy. Perfect. I need a file to claim and do that and everything. Again, we can do all of those stuff, but I'm just going to keep it to travel. So we are just going to have New Zealand, come back in. Right now, that is another way. There is another way to showcase this stuff, and I hope the spelling of New Zealand is right. But another one is, like, talk, and you have a card option, which I kind of like really like, because it's a much more beautiful way of showcasing this stuff. So let's say I want to showcase something. I'm just going to input the images again. Let me get an image from Google. So image Mexico JPEG. I search that, and we'll probably get a ton of images. So Mexico is a pretty beautiful place. You come back, click on this, and right click, copy image address, and come back to your Voiceflow. As you can see, there's a buttons option. I'm just going to come back to it in a second. But let's say I want to duplicate this. I want to have another card, right? So I can come back here and drop the card. I'm just going to drop the card here, right? So I can go ahead, change this, and put my link, right? And again, one thing I want you to see is that it should technically load up with this, right? So if I'm able to input the right link, and it is the, like, it should be accessible and everything. So if it takes a second, okay, it's not fetching, right? So let's figure out something, because these are all iStock and all those images. So again, all of these things, again, you need to like code that it happens while I'm doing a demo. You can see that, technically this should load up, right? So you see this is a proper image, it's open, like, open CD, and anyone can, if I just copy this URL and paste it in a browser, right? I press something, right? If I just copy and paste this, I get the image, right? And that's Voiceflow is going to scrape that data and get it here, right? Now in this card title, I can just go ahead and say, well, like, this is welcome to Mexico, right? And this is an image from this place, right? Again, we're just doing some simple stuff, right? So I can do that, right? And then I can say here is like, this is New Zealand, and you can go and watch this today, or something like that. Let's say I'm building a travel agent where we have, like, multiple cities. That's what we are trying to do, and people can get information about, right? Now if I'm just want to show this to you, I'll go ahead and delete this particular connector. So you can see this, you can delete the connectors and everything else. I'm just going to take this and let me zoom out or bring this block here so you can see this properly, and I will drop it here. And now let me just show this, how this looks to you, right? How does the cards look to you, which are different from the buttons? So look at this. This is beautiful. Like, you get cards, and like, instead of like adding a message or something, you have the image and you have the information about that image also, which I feel is extremely important and interesting to see. I've used this multiple times when you're thinking about filing a complaint or e-commerce products, or displaying different products and information. You can do all of this stuff. Let's come back. We can technically add, obviously, another option. We can add a Roam thing or something like that. But let's say this is okay. You have the options, everything. This is great for displaying stuff. But what happens next is important. You can have a button here, and then you can trigger something else. Again, just to do that, I'll click on button, and I can say here, get more information, right? Let's just say that, get more information, right? And here in the action step, I can do a lot more things. I'm just going to click get more information, and I click the same button here, book me flights or something like that, right? You can say, like, let's say get more information about Mexico, or New Zealand is a bit far away from US, so you might want to, like, or maybe you want to directly book flights. You can put in whatever you want, and then trigger whatever step that you want here. You have like option for multiple steps, right? And what I want, let's say I want to prompt and give it information about. So I can go ahead and select explain what Akshat does, or create a new prompt, and I want to create a new prompt. So I'm just going to say, you are an expert in Mexico, right? Explain 3 beautiful things about Mexico. This is a travel prompt. Once this is done, I'll just go ahead and start the agent again, and you can start seeing how this actually works, right? So because again, same prompts, we are just going to get the response expert part. Select a city, click on get more information, and I'll just get a response from here. Here are 3 beautiful things about Mexico, right? But then you'll be like, actually, like, this will be so stupid if you always have to keep doing this prompt for Mexico, New Zealand, and everything else, right? Obviously not, right? Again, we are lazy people. Let's do something lazy stuff. So what you can come here and do is, you have Mexico, you want the same kind of response for New Zealand also, and you want to take all of this into the same step. Once you come back and click on get more information, you saw this action step, right? This is where we're going to create our first variable. Click on set variable, right? You can value or expression. I'm just going to create a variable, say travel city, right? And I'm going to create that new as a variable, and just say, put this in red and create a variable. Set this value to Mexico. So every time someone clicks that button, it first sets the value to Mexico. I can come back to travel prompt, and I can come back here and change this into a variable. So every time you want to input a variable, click on a left curly braces, right? So this is the left curly braces. Again, let me just, like, click this again. So left curly braces, and let me just zoom in case you can't see. Left curly braces, and select city variable or travel city. That's the variable that we have. And you can just put again same thing and travel city. Perfect. And this is how we have the prompt and everything ready. Once I have this ready, all I have to do is same logic here in New Zealand also. I'm just going to say, I'm going to come back to buttons and click on, like, set a variable, right? And I'm going to come to variable and set, and come to value or expression. Same thing, travel city. I'm going to say New Zealand, right? And we can just connect all of these things to our beautiful prompt, right? Another thing to see is book me flights as an option. But let's say everyone wants to also get some more information, or you actually want to book flights. you can create another button. So particular card can have multiple buttons. So instead of this, we can say get more info. Right now, instead of book me flight, we can write this as get more info, right? And change this get more info thing to book flight. Let's say someone actually wants to book a part. You have another option where you can actually just go ahead and open a URL. If you go to actions, you have an option, as you can see here, open URL, and I can enter the URL. I'm just going to take flights.google.com. You can actually create like something from, let's say, New York, and we're just going to write JFK to Mexico, right? And we're just going to input that, and then we're going to click on explore. I can copy this URL and paste this link here. Once this link is pasted, let me show you what happens. Let's click, every time you want to test something, you don't always have to start from the start. You can just click on this run button here and we'll start your agent right from there. Again, it does not start in the same box, it starts in this debugging mode. So if I click on book flights, as you can see, it automatically opens me to the Google Flights part, which has the New York to Mexico or something. And you can add as many URLs as you want, completely up to you, right? You're not dependent on just Google Flights. You can enter any URL that you have. So any website can be linked here. As you can see, it ends because there is nothing connected after that, and again we have to come back and connect other stuff here, right? So this is again just about cards, right? You have an option to create cards, buttons, and everything else. You can add other actions on top of this. Set a variable, you can set like an API, you can write a code. If I add set a variable, and again I also want to because let's say someone goes to book a flight, I also want to talk to them about that. Did you book a flight about New Zealand, or did you have some conversation or something? I can chain these actions, right? So what will happen is, as soon as Voiceflow runs this, if I click ahead here, connect this to the prompt. As soon as I click here, I'll come back here. I just need to click a button, book flights, right? Then it will open to a new URL. But if I come back, you will start seeing that it starts also responding using AI prompt, because it has set the variable and it also responds with the New Zealand and everything else, right? All the details that we have written in the prompt itself. That helps a lot, right? Because that's how you can link your multiple actions together and actually make your cards useful rather than just having basic stuff. One thing I'll quickly show you here, the response got cut off, and the reason is there is a limit on the number of tokens you can use. You go to settings and you can see there are only 256 tokens that you can use. We are going to increase it to 2000, depends on whatever your use cases, do that. And we can use that. So right now I'm just going to keep haiku so that I don't run out of like crazy amount of tokens. And then you have New Zealand, Mexico, and you can do this. Another last option on how to showcase information to your users, which is like by default, is a carousel. And this is also another one of those beautiful things that you can actually use. So I'm just going to upload a couple of images. Again, same logic, as you can see, like similar to cards, same kind of information. Book a flight today or something. I'm just going to write book a flight for under $100. You can add buttons also, right? As you can see, here is a card option, right? In this card option, you don't get an add a card option, but in a carousel, you technically get an add a card option. And that means you can have multiple cards in a carousel. And I'll show you how does that look, right? So I'm just going to add New Zealand. Again, type New Zealand. Go to New Zealand next month. Book flights now. Writing simple copies, you can write whatever you want. And if I show this to you, how does this look? And let me just play this. You will start seeing the difference between a carousel and a card, right? So as you can see, this looks much better, right? This looks much better as a user interface, right? People can swipe around. So if you're using it on your phone, you can swipe around, and if you're using it on your PC, you can do this. It actually looks much better with the new agent widget. So let me just connect this back. So let me say this, and then technically connect this block again, right? And then just test your agent, and you'll start seeing how does this look also a bit more better in the carousel format when you're connected this. Now again, whatever you want to use is completely up to you, right? So you can see this is a different response, and you can see the information that's there. You can see the difference, the size. So if I have a single sentence here, it comes as this. If there's like a bigger sentence, it's broken down into 2 lines. So again, when you're creating these copies, make sure that the UI is also in a bit more inclined towards it. So I'll technically just have one single sentence in every one of them and do that. And this is how you get the prompts. But now again, obviously these don't have anything. So obviously you can go to every card, add a button, and apply the same logic that we did with our cards here. So I'm just going to do one of them. So I'm going to say get more information, right? And then technically I can just add an action and set a variable, and I'm just going to set a quickly travel city. I'm just going to set it to Mexico, right? I can just directly go ahead and connect this again to the same block, right? And if I just show this to you again as a test your agent, you'll start seeing how does a carousel look with a button. So you get this and you get this beautiful button again, and you can do like a lot of things with colors when we are publishing stuff and everything. I'll show that to you also. But again, this is how you have all the inputs and how to display capture, right? So you have a talk option about message, you can show a prompt, you can show a response, you can show an image, you can show a card, you can show a carousel, right? We have talked about buttons, about capturing stuff, right? And then we'll also talk about choice, right? So this is like an interesting one that I always say, right? Again, you can select multiple choices, right? You can give users multiple choices. Perfect. So the last step that we have in the listen part is called choice, right? Now, technically, if you just use choice as with like, again, I just added Mexico and New Zealand, you have options there. You can either add an intent or a trigger, or you can just add a button, right? So you can select an intent, like let's say customer support or something like that, or you can just add like a button, hello, right? Or whatever, like button test, right? And once you do that, right, once you have this option, then you can technically just click on play. And as you see this, you will start seeing this also as normal buttons. And you might be like, again, how does this make sense then, right? What is the use of choice if I'm still going to have the same button test, right? But choice is a very beautiful agent where the beauty is in not using buttons, but in using intents, right? So let me explain this. Let's say when a customer comes to your agent, right, and they don't want to click buttons. These are other people, right? They want to just type and keep typing, right? And you are on an agent. So you want to create probably different intents here. So let's try to create, right? So one is there is customer support, but let's start with a simple one, right? Create an intent, book travel tickets, right? Let's say this, when trigger this intent, when here you have to describe when should this particular intent is just like what does the user want to do, right? And AI is going to help us determine what does the user want to do. So let's say we write here, when the user asks to book tickets, then only trigger this, right? And you don't need to write this, trigger this or something, and I'm just going to do that, right? And then you can click on generate, and you can automatically generate sample phrases. So let's say your users always, let's say you have a customer agent or something, or whenever users wants to email, they always say, help me book tickets. The same way we did with variants, help me book tickets. Let's say this is one variation, and then we can ask it to generate other 5 options on what the user might say, so that whenever the user says any of these things, I want to purchase travel tickets or something like that, you can trigger this particular intent. Now, another option that we have here is required entities, right? So right now we don't have entities, and again, I'll come to entities in a second and then come back here in a short. Perfect. Let's click on create intent, right? And as you can see, we have a book travel tickets as an intent, and like again as a button, I'm just going to change this to book travel tickets. Okay, perfect. So again, we have book travel tickets, and I'm just going to test this out, right? So let's see what happens. But before testing out, I actually need to connect this to some place so that we actually get some kind of a response, right? Okay, and I'll just say triggering. I'm just going to put here triggering booking tickets, right? And I'm just going to keep that, right? And that's it. So now what happens is, instead of buttons right here, there's something crazy good happening. Instead of buttons, you also have an option that in case the user types something, we actually know what it is. So let's say if I type here, I need to book travel tickets, it will automatically take me to triggering book tickets, right? But if instead of this, right, let me just showcase what we had here as buttons. And these were our buttons here, just to connect this back, put this down. And if I just connect this back again, let's say instead of start button, I just take this here. Even all, as you can see, these all 3 things are connected. I take the start here, connect this here, and let me just play this, right? And I'll just take this, and if I click on, I need to book travel tickets now, right? We'll just get to this, right? We don't know actually what is happening, right? There is no other triggers or something else. Another option that you can obviously use in buttons is you have this listen for other triggers, right? It's still listening to it, but it's not perfect, right? So it's still figuring out, okay, does this match to something else? But we don't have that, and we'll come in depth to that. But that's where choice is. So that's the difference between buttons and choice, right? Choice actually allows you to give multiple options to the user, both as a button and also as an input. So let's say someone had input Mexico, they would actually get triggered that, right? Like, so we'll be able to determine a lot of those options. But let's come back to the most important part, which is intents that we have talked about so much, right? So if you come here, you will see that there are intents as an option available here. And in intents, you can see we have a customer support intent, take a book travel tickets intent, which that means is that every time someone asks some questions about travel tickets or customer support, we take them to this particular place. Now, technically, you have an option here where you actually determine how does an intent get triggered. But for example, let's say the user is inputting that I want to book travel tickets. How does the AI know, right? And that's where you get to this particular place. You can select a model which determines that. By default, it's Haiku. We can select Sonnet, or we can now also select O3 Mini, which is extremely good at chain of thought thinking and really good model. And you can again see the prompt. I would just say don't edit this, it's created, it works pretty well. And you can just click on save this. Now what happens is, if I come back to my workflow, and this is where we'll do a bit of fun stuff, you have an option, you can see listen for other triggers, and I'll connect the start button directly here. So even if I come here and say I need help with an account, right, or which means that I'm technically asking for customer support, right? Now if I test this again, right, and I've just connected it to the choice block, and then you can come back here and just technically, hopefully we should get something. Let's see, let's trigger this again. I think this is because we're getting blanks, so I'll just click from start, and I'll probably should see options and choices, right? I can select I need to book travel tickets, or instead of that, as you see, there is no option for customer support here. I need help with an account, right? Let's say I say that, right? That means I technically need customer support, right? It will automatically take me to the customer support place, right? And as you can see, this is beautiful thing. It's just there, customer support, right? Let me show you how I added this, right? So right click anywhere in the place and add a trigger. And then in triggers, you have an option for an intent or an event. We're going to talk about intents only. In intent, you can see there are options. So yes, no is obviously default options, but you have options for customer support and travel tickets. So I obviously clicked on customer support and just connected it to this particular region. So I can go ahead and delete this trigger also, right? So I can come back here and delete this. So you have a trigger which every time someone says any of these words, right? So let me just say any of these phrases, or even something remotely close to these phrases. This does not need to be exactly like this, right? Because that's the beauty with AI, right? You have to allow users to have an option, right? So if I come back here and click my test your agent, right, I'll technically see nothing. But if I say I need to book my travel tickets, right, you can see if I just go ahead and say instead of this, I just say a message, ask me anything, right? Or I can say how can I help, and technically just connect this here and say again test your agent, and then I go ahead and let it test, and you get how can I help. You get all the button and options. But let's say I just say I need to book travel tickets, or I need to talk to someone from customer support, right? And this might not be a phrase in what we want, but it will go ahead and still trigger the customer support intent. As you see, it takes the customer support intent and triggers that. This works really perfectly because the point is you always get intents and you get triggers, and then you have you can merge them all together and work on a truly AI agent experience. Because then the buttons, users don't need to click a specific button. They have the option to, but they don't need to. Now again, one thing that I want to always tell you, whenever you're using triggers and intents, right? Again, if it's like a small mini chatbot, then it's fine. You can have everything in a single place. Let me just drop this down. You can have everything in a single place. But as you can see, just by demo, you can see there's so many blocks that are created. Always what I'll try to do is click on create a workflow and right here customer support, right? And customer support, click on create workflow, and then once I come here, you will see a trigger is automatically added in every workflow. Here I can select the workflow, I can click on this, I can select the trigger and click on intent again and select customer support. Why do I do this? Every time when you're designing your workflow as an agent, right now it looks simple, right? But the point is, as it keeps getting complex, it becomes a lot of problems to have multiple steps, right? And everything, you'll have a trigger here, you'll have an intent here, and everything else. So having different workflows is good. And then the best thing is you can trigger and select different workflows from the left hand side and move around. Again, just a quality of life tip that I'm sure once you start building complex agents, you will thank me, right? So again, we've covered everything in talk, we've covered everything in listen. We'll come to the logic parts and understand in depth about how to actually start building other parts of it. We have the logic and the depth steps to talk about, but before that, let's come to the most critical part of Voiceflow, which is called the knowledge base, right? Now, again, think about knowledge base from a perspective that we want to ask some specific questions, right? And those specific questions have answers only available in your company's documentation or in a specific place or something like that. For example, in our travel city example, I can simply go ahead and say it might not have information about what is the latest travel guidelines if someone is traveling to Mexico from US or something like that. So what can you do in that case is come back and click on knowledge. Once you come and click on knowledge, you will see that this is right now empty, and you can add multiple types of data sources here. Now again, as you click on data source, you have options available here on the kind of data sources that you can add. Right now, I'm going to use URLs. Now again, very simply, what is a URL? Is just literally the link that you find in any website, right? So let me just move this down so you can see this URL. Right now, I'm just going to copy this. This is the travel website of US government for Mexico based travel. And I'm going to click on this and enter the URL. Now, obviously you can add multiple URLs in the same type or upload a file which has all the URLs or something like that. Now, on the refresh rate is something that I actually love when you're using URLs, because a lot of times what will happen is that, let's say you have imported this data, right? Now, this page technically has like, kind of any alert if it comes from Mexican embassy about like, this technically has alerts about people traveling to Mexico from US and all those things, right? Now, obviously, this information will keep getting updated, right? So right now, if you can see here, if I click on this, the data source will right now look like, just like get everything that is available. It has gone to the website and scraped all that data and brought it here, right? So that means it technically has all the information that is available on this page in our knowledge base. But what you can do is, you might want to say that, Akshat, I want literally real-time data. So you can go ahead and set this refresh to be, just click on this, and you can set this refresh to be daily. What does that mean? That every day at certain point in time, it will go ahead and scrape the Mexico website, this one, the travel Mexico website, and get the new data. So in case something new comes up, let's say they say like, you can't travel to Mexico for so and so dates or whatever, you can then have that. This really helps when you want some place where you want real-time information from, and this is like the most easiest way to also build agents. But let's say you are doing this for a company, right? So we go to Google and just search about Google About Us, right? Now let's say you want to build an agent that can help you answer all the questions about Google. Now Google is a popular company, so it might be easy, but right, like, again, you can go ahead and just copy the URL again and paste that and get all the information, which will have everything that they need and XYZ, and you can just build an agent right now. So let's say I come back to the knowledge base. We are going to test it so you actually understand what I'm talking about, right? So let's say click on preview. I'm going to ask a question, right? So let's see something that's only mentioned on this particular page. So let's say, let's ask this, right? What is security alert level 4? Or let's say, what security alert is happening right now? I'm not sure if that is going to like give enough information, but let's see. Just click on this and send and get some. Right, so no answers found, but it would have gone and checked out some stuff and everything. Let's try another question. How much money do I need to carry in Mexico? Right, and if I type that, technically I should technically get an answer for $10,000, right? And that's perfect, because that's what is mentioned here as $10,000 as a restriction, right? So both entry and exit country restrictions. Now, as you click on the settings button, this is something that you can change, and this information right now, as you see, is being referred from the information that you're given. So based on the URL that you have, I'm just going to remove this. Based on the URL that you have, it has gone and seen the data and has picked out the data that it has, and you can see like, different kind of information being referred, and finally we get a direct answer. Here, let's say you are looking at like, much more detailed information, or you want to change how the AI is answering this. You can change the model. So again, the same format, like you can make it O3 mini, you can add it to 3.5 sonnet or something like that. Completely up to you, right? Now again, based on how you want to change it, you might also want to say like, always respond in one word, right? Again, not something that you should use, but technically, let's say we use the last question and then technically send it again. You will be able to see that we are just going to get responses 10,000 rather than the whole sentence, and that's super important, right? Again, also you can set up like how many tokens to use and all those things, same way that we did in the prompt part. The only thing is like you have much more control here on how you're going to get the question answer part done. So I'm going to remove this. I just want this to be simple, right? And then I can just say this, and we'll probably get the same kind of a response, because again, it's a simple question. But in that same way, I can also add this particular. So this is the tourism policy review of Mexico, and I can download this, right? And this is a massive PDF, right? So I'll download this, and probably getting downloaded in a second, right? And let me just save this here. And once you see, this is 3.2 MB. So I'm going to go ahead, add data source, and then I can select upload file. And once I select upload file, I can just go ahead, select the upload file and import that. Now, because this has more data, I can actually try out a couple of stuff and showcase you how this changes the way we have a conversation with. So let's find something in Mexico travel policy which I've never read in my life and try to figure out some basic details, right? So let's see, right? Like, what are some entrance? Let's ask that, right? So what are some interesting insights about Mexico travel policy from a tourist perspective, right? And then we're going to ask that. I'm just going to change this spelling, and let's see. And this will go ahead and through the whole documentation and try to find us an information, right? And as you can see, based on the key reference information, here are the key insights. Domestic tourism, international tourism is heavily concentrated, and why, and a lot of other information that's available. And then you can see what it has referred. It referred the PDF automatically, but because it understands the context that you're dealing with. Again, it understands that this is the particular document that you are talking about, and you got the information from there. It could have also referenced both of those documents or multiple documents in short to get information. But given that this is a massive document, again, you will technically have like a lot of these kind of documents, or you will have small documents which has. And again, you can change. Let's say you want more detailed answers and you want a bit more critical answer, like you want it to think a bit more or want chain of thought more. You can select a 203 mini and do that also. Chunk limit is something super interesting, right? Chunk limit technically means how many chunks to refer. So let me go ahead and show this to you again, and I just mentioned that. I asked it a question about tourist benefits, right? And it gave me this final answer, and also you can see the chunk scores available here. It showcases what information it has referred to give this answer. This is a very interesting insight, because when you see there are 3 specific chunks it has referred to, you can also increase or change the chunks that you are talking about, right? This is a preview option, or if you switch to, like, you can say Claude 3.5 Sonnet, you can how many tokens are there, how much temperature is there, and you can change anything that you want. So let's say based on this itself, I'm just going to keep this question, and then once I click here, you will start seeing that this will start loading up the chunks of information that the PDF has been split into. So PDF has been split into multiple different small chunks, right? So it has 337 chunks. So instead of reading the whole PDF at one shot, AI goes ahead and selects specific places where I can find this kind of an answer, get those information sources back, and then respond to your question. So again, this is just like a bit more like, understanding of how the knowledge base works. And again, from a settings perspective, I technically still again like Claude 3.5 Sonnet or O3 Mini, depending upon how complex my use cases. So for example, if I'm talking about anything, if I'll be building related to some kind of a government policy, or where something I want specific information across multiple formats of document, then I'll go for an O3 Mini or something like that to get much more information details. But else I can just, like, again, increase the chunk limit with any other model also, and like, just refer a bit more data and get the response. Completely depends upon you, but again, very interesting to go forward with it. Okay, so we are just going to save this, and then we would come back to workflows. And actually, let's come back to the customer support workflow, right? So here is the customer support workflow, and let's say in this, you want to actually now refer to information or documentation before answering a question, right? So let's say someone has asked you for some kind of an help, right? And your company has certain specific terms and conditions and policies. So here, you technically can't answer just based on AI, because your company has specific information that is not available to AI. So then we use our step here, which is called KB search, right? So you go to the dev step and select on KB search. What is KB search? KB search is just the short form for knowledge based search. Here, what we are going to do is we're going to enter a question and then get the information the same way we got from asking the questions right when I was testing the knowledge base out. So here, if I say, how can tourists benefit? And then I just select, like, where do you want me to store all this information? I can create a variable, knowledge base, or I'm just going to write KB answer, right? And I'm going to change the color of the variable. You can change the color of the variable and stuff if you want, right? And click on this and create a variable. Now what will happen is when I run this, it will fetch all this information and has stored this. You can see it has stored all this information. It has not given me an answer. It has gone there and taken that question details and given the information that it has fetched from there here, right? Again, so just to quickly explain you the knowledge based search step, this is where the knowledge based search step happens. It takes the user questions, get the information details, not the answer, get the information details from the knowledge base, and then we will craft the response, right? So how it works is very simply, we get this question, right? So instead of this, I can say very simply, talk to the user. We are going to say, please let me know what your question is, and I'll try my best to assist. I'm just going to keep this here, connect to this. But before that, I'm just going to say listen and let capture value, right? So I want, let's say, capture entire user reply. I want to capture the whole user's question in one shot. And based on whatever user's questions is, I take this and connect this here. And instead of this particular question, I will just mention last utterance, right? And this is great, right? Once I've done this, right? So all these steps exist here. I can just go ahead and click on this and now start asking questions to my knowledge base. But you'll see what the response actually comes is not something that we were talking about. So if I do this, it will technically get me nothing, right? Because it has gone and taken the information. It has got the chunks available from the knowledge base, but it has not actually got a response. So what I'm going to do is take my prompt step here, right? And that's why I'm saying we are going to craft this purple thing. We are going to craft the response, right? So in this, we are going to create a prompt and we're going to say answer questions, right? And then that's the prompt, and we're just going to say you are an expert in, let's say, Mexico travel policy, and you will help users understand in depth about the same while making it easier for them to understand. And once we write this, right, we can just come to say I have a question about the policy listed here, or I can just say, like, again, I'll select class of trends. I can say here is a question about the policy that I have. Respond in simple terms in 3 sentences, right? Because the point is here, if someone is asking about a policy, we need a bit more depth, and we can do that. Again, we can change the settings to be haiku or something else, right? We can keep it sonnet and just keep this here. We're going to technically just keep this last utterance available. But one thing, if you see, I forgot to do is there is no information that it has, right? It does not still know. It is just trying to go in and answer, but based on what knowledge, right? So what I can come back here and say, here is the information for more details about the policy that you can use while answering the question. So here, the search step, the information that we got from search step, we can mention that here. We can say KB answer. Here is the information for more details about the policy that you can use while responding to answer, right? And then once I do this, obviously it is going to ask for 2 information. It's asking for me what information you have from the knowledge base and your question. But we don't have any of that. So we are just going to say and try to run this and see how it works, right? So I'm just going to come back here, click on start, and then how can you as a tourist benefit from Mexico tourist facilities? And once I do that, you'll see first it goes ahead and takes a couple of seconds. It goes ahead and searches the knowledge base for information steps, right? So what is available as in the PDF, and then finally it responds me with all the details. And you can see here, right? And you can see like it has gone and seen 3 chunks, and it has got 3 chunks back, and finally responded with this information. And that's very important, because when you're using knowledge base search step, you might feel like, actually, like, again, why don't we just add the whole knowledge base in the prompt? The reason behind that is it becomes a lot of, first of all, it consumes a lot of tokens, and second, it becomes a huge problem when you are using, like, like if you are right now just looking at a couple of documents as an example, you will probably have like 15, 20, 30 documents. Some of the agents that I built have like 40, 50 documents, right? And that time it's much better to execute the knowledge base search step and then do that. Now, our best practice here to get information from knowledge base is not just to search it once, but actually to go ahead and take another step, search this again, KB search, and then actually create a question. So what I will go ahead and do, and I'll show you something, right? I'm going to create another prompt. I want to go ahead and create a new prompt, and I want to say, create a detailed question, right? So you already have the context of what the user is asking. The user has asked, I'm just going to write this. So again, very simply what I've written here as a prompt is the user has asked the following question. Make sure you make a more detailed question from what the user has said and reply strictly with the question only. So let's test this, right? So what I'm going to do is, again, here is how you as a tourist can benefit. And I need a more detailed question, right? So I need, like, here's a more detailed version of the question. And then again, you can see, I don't want technically this, right? How can international tourists do X, Y, Z? I want to say very specifically, don't add any greeting or explanation, just reply with a more detailed question which covers the different aspects of the question that the user asked. I want to say reply strictly with the question of minimum 5 bullets and 7 sentences. Right now, again, this is why I'm doing this, because I want an extremely detailed question. I'm going to switch to O3 mini, increase the number of tokens that it has, and then run this again and see how it responds, right? And then technically I should get a much bigger question. And the reason why I do that always is that, whenever you get the user to input a question, right? Users are not the best question answering people. And I'll show you a quick example, right? This is a much bigger and better question. What technically user will ask is, again, just like, tell me about Mexico tourism. That's it. Like, again, and the point is, let's say you are an agent for a policy specific website, or like, our example where you have like so much data. The users don't know how to ask great questions. So what we are doing here is we are taking the user's input, crafting a bigger question, and then technically create another option here. We are going to take another KB search step, put this here. I already had that input, and technically instead of this prompt, I want to use a set step, right? So you come here and you will see in the logic there is a set step, and we're going to use the set step and just place this here. Click on variables to set, and you see the option as a prompt, right? So what I want to select is I want to create a detailed question prompt, and I want to store this. I want to store this in a variable, right? We have been creating variables since start. So we're going to create AI generated question, and I'm going to make it a color, and then I'm going to create this as a variable. So every time, now what will happen is it will create a question automatically based on user's input, right? And then I'm going to take this AI generated question and again create a variable which is going to say AI generated AI gen KB, right? So this is the question variable gets information from for the question generated by AI. Right, now what I've done here is very simply I've created another variable, but now this time the question is from the AI, right? And this is a best practice, right? Again, this is not something that as a step you need to know. This is a best practice to do. So I'm going to search the KB 2 times. I'm going to search the KB once with the user's question, because sometimes AI here can also make a mistake and make it much more detailed rather than keeping it simple, right? And then you can have like, another question here where we ask it a specific question about more depth and get that information. Here we are getting the user's information, and then finally we're going to respond. But I have to go ahead and edit this prompt, and then I'm going to say, and here is more information, and then I'm going to say this is going to be the AI generated KB. So now in my variables, I have 3 variables. I have the user question, and then I have 2 separate knowledge base inputs, which are like, from more detailed question and for a simple question. So if I go ahead and start this question again and ask this question again, it will go ahead and take a couple seconds more, but get a much more detailed answer. This is something that I would tell you that always do this when you're building some kind of a customer support agent or something like that, because here it helps you really build a much more depth of an answer, right? So as you can see, like again, the answer might not change a lot because again, it's not something super complex here, but you see here is the question that we got, right? And here is the question received, and then it fetched multiple options, right? And then fetch again, and then finally gave us the response that we need to know. And that helps, right? That helps a lot when you're actually doing stuff and building something super complex. So again, this is just like a good practice to do, and it helps you a lot. I'm telling you, this is probably like one of the best tricks in the book. Perfect. That's how you use a knowledge base step, right? So let's come to the other steps that we have. Now we have a condition step, right? And for this condition step, let's come back to our main question and answer part and technically get rid of like again a lot of these steps, because this is like getting too messy and I just want to keep a lot, very small amount of them. So if I'm just going to delete this, and yep, delete all of that, and technically delete these image cards and just bring this back to the start option, right? So let's see. Now, once we come here, we are going to see first of all the logic step is a condition, right? Now, this is an if and else, right? It's very simple. If you don't know what an if else is, I'll explain you, right? In this, we have business logic, right, where we can build a builder, or there is a prompt-based logic where you have options. I'll explain you both. In a simple if and else logic, here we are trying to determine what the user wants to do, right? So now if I bring out the if condition block, and then very simply in this, one of the simplest example for a travel thing is, think about like every time you have to ask for a budget, right? Let's say you are a luxury travel company, or let's say you have different packages, right? So let's say the user, we are going to ask the user, what is your budget for this trip, right? What is your budget for this trip, right? And then we say this question mark, and technically we also want them to obviously say something, right? We want to capture their budget. So you go to the capture, and here we get to entities. Now, technically, entity is something specific. What is the information that you want from the user's response, right? So here we can enter the entity name as user budget, right? And I say that, and then here you have option to select the data type. So let's say if you ask someone what is their budget, and they say like, my budget is around $10,000, right? That's a great response, right? But technically we don't need that to qualify. We need only the $10,000 as an amount, but users won't enter that. So from here, what we can say is, in this whole you have multiple options. You can select a number, email, name, age, URL, ordinal currency, and like ton of them. I'm just going to select number. And then technically we can add some values here, right? Technically here it can like, I can add 1,000 as like a value or something like that, and then again other things. Right now we just don't need to do that because it's simple, it's a number, right? So technically from here I get the user's input, right? So once I get that input, once I get that entity as this, and as you can see, if someone does not enter the specific name, we'll get a problem, right? So very simply I'll show you. Let's say I say I don't know, right? And then technically if I say that I don't know what my budget is, it will go ahead and reprompt me. Yep, no worries, can you give me an estimate or range for the budget, right? And this is based on that, right? So the user has indicated a certain uncertainty about their budget, which is a required reprompt. So again, you can give an entity as a reaction or something like that, right? So I can come here and say, okay, what kind of a reprompt that I want to give, right? So you can say like, ask the user strictly about a budget or something like that and everything else, right? You can determine how the AI responds. Because I have not given a budget, it's going to keep asking me until I give it a budget exactly. Then this is listen for other triggers. Very simply, in case the user says, no, I want to talk to customer support, it can go take you to the customer support part and do that. And then here are rules and exit scenarios and everything, right? So if here I can say, if the user says, I don't want to share something, let them move forward, right? So technically here I can say, okay, if the user is not said this or something and then XYZ and all of those things, I can set up a rule that the budget needs to be minimum $10,000, let's say, right? And I'll show you how this works, right? So let's say this, and then I'll create this, and and every time you will keep seeing this training option come, just click on train so that it like, just trains the AI agent a bit better, and you can use it with a couple of other things. So what is your budget for the trip? Give it a second. Perfect, the agent is trained. So what is your budget for this? I can say my budget is 1,000, right? So if I say 1,000, technically it should not take it. It should say that, no, you need to probably like our minimum budget threshold is $10,000 or something like that. Let's see, it's going to take a couple of seconds to do this. As you can see, it came up with this, right? So it seems like your budget is a bit lower than the required minimum of $10,000. Could you please confirm or adjust the budget for this trip, right? And then based on that, you can actually give like, the AI the handoff that if someone is not qualified, then don't proceed, right? It depends on the kind of business you are running, right? Technically, you might not want to let them go, or you might want to still capture their information or something like that. You might want to give that, okay, if your budget is lower, maybe you will like sign up for a discount or like a newsletter or something like that, right? Again, it can play out multiple scenarios. But here we are just going to like, keep this. And once we've got the information, we'll come to this additional part, right? So let's say right here specifically, we'll create path and we'll select on condition builder. In this, if the user budget is, and then you have like multiple options here, right? So I want if the budget is less than, let's say 50,000, right? And don't worry, we are going to get exactly the number amount. We're not going to get dollar amounts, right? So the user budget is less than 50,000, do something, right? And if the user budget, let's say in this case, we'll also put another one. If the user budget is greater than $10,000, and given that it's a rule, it might always be there. So if it is greater than 20,000, I can also say another input there that if the user's budget is greater than 10,000, only then proceed, because sometimes the AI might get confused also, right? So here I'll say that if the user's budget is greater than $10,000, right, then only technically do this or do XYZ, right? And then technically you can see like, there are multiple options here. This is match all. Match all technically means that, you want both the conditions to match, right? When I say both the conditions to match, that like, let's say if I say another input here, if the user budget is greater than 10,000 and less than 50,000, right? Because the point, if someone inputs that their budget is $500,000, right, then technically it's both. I have both the conditions here, right? It also is bigger than $50,000, but also bigger than 10,000. So I'll hit both the nodes. So instead of that, I'm saying if the user budget is greater than $10,000 and less than $50,000, do this particular step, right? So I will do this step. If the user budget is less than $50,000, instead of this, I will just go ahead and say if the user budget is greater than $50,000, then do the first step, right? So let me show this as an example. If the user budget is greater than themselves, we'll just say we are connecting you to a personal assistant, right? And then once we do this, and then if the user budget is less than $10,000 and then something like that, we can just say, please let us know your details and we'll help you. right? Because technically you might have like, again, if someone is like, again, more than $10,000 and less than $50,000, technically you just want to get their informations and everything. They don't need personal assistance. I know, like, again, I'm quoting crazy amounts, but just as an example, right? And then you obviously, like, this is your if and else. So if this happens, do this. If this happens, do this, right? That's the question here. So let's say we are going to play this, and I'm just going to, like, run this here, and I'd say my budget is high around $100,000, right? And I put that, right? So technically, based on all of this, I should just get the value 100,000, and my first trigger should come up, right? We are connecting you to personal assistant because my budget is more than $50,000. And again, let's try again. Let's make sure that all our conditions are working. My budget is around 34,000, right? Let's say $34,000, right? Let's say a random number. So then technically the second path, this one where I'm saying, like, please let us know details, should get triggered, right? And you'll see, please let us know details. And you can see all the debug information coming up here, right? So condition match taking path number 2. And remember, path 1 is the first option, path 2 is the second option, and then again, you can add as many as more. Let's say the users does not matter to any of these budgets, right? So then technically, again, we will obviously keep reprompting, but let's say you want to capture everyone. You might offer $1,000 product also, you might offer $100,000 product also, and you might help everyone. You might be a big agency which has all kind of packages. Then you might say, then here we can just say, okay, awesome, let's take you to our website, right? So then whenever user is entering something other than either of that, right, then this is the fallback path, and you should always have an else path, because in case both the conditions don't match, we will end up here. This is how, like, the simple if and else condition works for business logic, right? That's one option. The new latest option is a prompt, and for that I want to keep this because we are going to use this for building our agent, right? And I'm always like, I love to reuse blocks and everything. We're going to use another option. We're going to use logic condition, and we're going to say prompt, right? And in this prompt, I technically want to get the idea of user's itinerary, right? So when I'm saying itinerary, I want to understand what kind of a traveler they are. So are they a vacation traveler or are they a business traveler? Let's say, right, like they're going for a business, or they are, like, just going for vacation with their family and friends and stuff like that, right? Because those are two different travel personas, or it could be anything for you. I'm just taking an example here. So let's say that's the prompt, right? So then I will create a prompt. I will go ahead again, come back to our beautiful prompt management thing, and then come back here, change it to check travel persona. This is the answer that the user has given about what kind of travel are they looking to do. And we're just going to put the last utterance. Based on the above, determine that are they perfect. So here's what I've done. I just said, like, based on the above, determine that are they traveling for a vacation or business, and then finally respond strictly in one word, either business or vacation, based on the travel persona, right? And once we do that, right, we have also given a system prompt. You are an expert in determining user travel persona and XYZ, right? And that's simple, right? Again, I'm just going to change our settings again. I want this to be O3 mini, and I'm just going to click this, save this here, and then technically come back here, right? In this path, we will have to select. Now here you are creating the same path, right? Here you have to determine what kind of a response are you expecting from the prompt. So here we are either responding that if the value is business, right, or technically I want to create another path where if the value is vacation, right? And this one again, I think I deleted that, business, right, or this. So you have two options here, right? And one thing you have to see is that in here you also again have the same option of less than, contains, not contains, and everything. But again, given that LLMs will technically respond with either a number or a word, what I always use is I always do a binary option or like a multiple option or something like that, right? So we don't need to like have just two options. You might say business, vacation, family, and everything, but make sure that the response is always a single word. And that's why when you're doing prompt engineering for Voiceflow, you will always make sure that we are always trying to respond strictly in this particular format. That's one thing very important. Give the context in the prompt, and then finally give it enough information on how the prompt should respond with, right? Because that's very super important in the conditional perspective here, right? So let's say this is there, and then I'm just going to remove this, and these are the three options. Obviously I need to give couple of inputs here. What kind of trip are you planning, right? And I'm going to bring this here, bring this back, connect this here, and technically just bring this whole thing back here. So now I obviously have to like again still ask a capture value and then do that and connect this. And then I'm just going to capture the user reply because this is not going to be like something specific, right? I just want the user to explain what kind of a trip are you planning, right? So if I say technically I'm planning to visit my office over next week in New York, right? Then technically this is a simple response. You should just get a response as business, right? And as you can say, condition match, taking path one. Obviously, we don't have it disconnected. That's why it did not go anything forward, but it is working. So the prompt is working. So what I can do is, if the value is business, and I can say, I am connecting you with my business travel team, and I can just do that. And I can say, if you're going for a vacation, we can ask them how many people are going to be traveling or something like that, and how many people are going to be traveling, right? Because the point is obviously business travelers get preference based on given that they're going to spend a lot more comparatively to a simple person who's planning a vacation, right? Because again, vacation comes in all the budgets, business travel comes with company specific budgets, so most of the times airlines and travel people part of that. That's just random stuff that you don't need to know. Okay, so once you do that, what kind of trip are you planning? Let's say I want to visit to have some fun and relax, have fun and relax, right? In let's say Spain, right? Let's just give it an example. And based on that, technically, then I should go to the vacation part, and then how many people are going to be traveling? That's the question, because it understood that this is someone who wants to go for vacation, took the prompt, evaluated the prompt, and then gave me this response. And this is how we are this is how you can build your qualifying flow, right? Because you have different conditions, and that means you're also not determined by just inputs that are very restricted. Like budget is going to be always a number, but this is like a bit more exploratory, so we can build like a sales agent here, which we'll try to do with the travel things and everything else. Okay, perfect. This is great, awesome, perfect. We are coming very close to like understanding all our blocks and also putting together our beautiful AI parts together, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to showcase you how to use an API, right? An API is something I believe is that all of you are going to use a lot of times, right? But it's probably one of those steps which will take us a decent understanding. So take a deep breath and let's get started, right? Perfect. So let's talk about the API step. Now again, APIs are a way to interact with applications outside Voiceflow for us right now. Now APIs across the world are used to interact with applications on a daily basis, like a ton of them. So we just go ahead and I brought in an API step here. Again, this is how it looks like. Again, very simple. You can drag it from the dev step API here, and you have multiple options here. Now again, very simply, if you don't know what an API is till now, it's completely fine. Go and watch this video here, which has like all the depth of details about API. I've explained it in depth on starting with APIs, but here we are going to just try to fetch and send some information to an Airtable. If you don't know what an Airtable is, let me just show you. This is what an Airtable looks like. It's a platform where you have like Google Sheet and databases had a baby and they made Airtable, kind of like that. It's like a beautiful place where you can input a lot of information, and we're going to try to input our customer details here. So every time someone comes to your agent and they input their information, we need to still store that data somewhere, right? So the best place to store is in an Airtable, and we're going to try to see how we do that, right? So let's get started. First steps first, we're going to come here and come to Airtable API, right? And now let me just zoom out a bit. And when you come to Airtable API, you will get something kind of a this link, right? Now again, as you can see here, this is where we come, where we see the Airtable API. Here you have options on what kind of APIs exist to take a record, to update a record, to create a record, and everything else, right? So let's say we want to create a record, right? We are going to copy this, and I'm going to teach you the simplest way to do that. Always, whenever you're trying to use APIs, think about of a curl request. This is called again CURL, right? So it's called command URL request, and we can just technically copy this whole thing, right? And come to another tool, and I'm just going to tell you what that is, Postman, right? So this is like the world's best platform for API. I already have an account on it, and you can again, it's free of cost. You can download it and use it. We're going to come to Postman and come here and paste the curl request. I just copied this whole thing and pasted the whole thing here. Once you do that, you get a lot of other information. You see the headers are automatically input, your body is automatically populated here, and all the other things. How does this help you? Well, technically now your job is pretty simple, because when you go back to Voiceflow, you just need to literally copy paste all of this stuff. So you can copy the URL, right, and then paste it. Perfect, right? The only thing is, remember that there are multiple options when you're using an API. And as you can see here, our request looks as post. Our request is post, right? So we need to switch from get to post, and post means we are sending data, get means we are getting data. Pretty simple. And then for the headers, same thing again. We're going to take this headers, right? We're going to take the authorization, right? Paste it, and then as you can see, very simply, there is an issue here. They need you to have a secret API token. Now, if you're using APIs for the first time, there will be a different way how these API tokens are dealt, right? Every time there will be a different, completely different way, right? For Airtable, I already have the authentication for me. So I have this place where I'll show you how to create one. So I'm just going to write like, test YouTube complete tutorial, and then I'm going to add a scope, and I'm going to just select it's supposed to write records, right? I'm going to add a read also, because in case I want to use the same API token. And I'm going to go to like select user details as a base, and I'm just going to click on create token, and I get this token. Again, don't try to use this because I'm going to delete it after the video. But let's say I copy this, and then I can just simply, all I have to do is come and paste this here. Okay, that's it. That's the whole token, right? But obviously this is not a great way of storing token. So what option we have here is, because again it's a secret, if you give this token to anyone else, people will be able to utilize your own tokens and XYZ. What you can do is come back here and come to settings, right? What you can do is we can come back here, come to settings, click on secrets, right? And click on secrets and click create a secret, right? And here we'll enter a value of the token, and we'll say Airtable API key. Right, and this is again, you will know this, like again, if you're using APIs, this would be super simple. Here is where we store it securely, so that nobody can, like, when I'm recording videos or you're sharing this work with someone, they don't have access to your particular token. We'll come here, we'll put in bearer, and we'll select, as you can see, now we have two options, variables and secrets, right? And we select Airtable API key. Perfect. Now once you have that, obviously we have a couple of other things still we need to copy. So we need to copy application.json. Again, to understand this all in detail, you can go ahead and watch the video, or like, just understand a bit more about APIs in general. You can just like Google a lot of stuff up, right? Now again, as you can see, parameters is this params, right? We don't have any parameters. We don't have any other authorization also as specifically. We just have the body part, right? So I'm just going to copy this. I'm just copying this. That's it. Like again, let me just move myself so you can see this, right? And then again, from a headers perspective, you can see there's authorization, nothing's there, params there, nothing's there. And then you have this whole thing. You're just going to copy this and come back and technically let me move myself again and just click this form data. And here, as you can see, there are multiple options. I don't want form data, I want raw. You want to input raw data, and you can see the option is also available here. It's raw, right? It's not none, it's not form data, it's nothing other, it's raw. So that means raw is that based on how we want to send data, we are going to send it here, right? So we are just going to send, obviously, the only thing I want to send technically is just a single record. As you can see, Airtable always gives you an option to enter 2 records at a time. I don't want to do that. So what I can do is I can just edit the JSON, right? So I can come back here, see this, and as you can see, this is like a additional field which I don't need. I'm just going to remove that, take this whole thing, copy this again, and come back here and paste, right? And this is perfect. Now I have the whole thing available here, ready to go. Now here you have another option where you are going to capture response. Now right now when I'm updating a record, I'm just going to get a success or a failure, so I don't need to capture anything here. But I don't want to input always Akshat as the agent, right? I always don't want to input just my name. I want the user details. I want people to input their name and email and send that data back. So what we're going to do is, quickly, we're going to create a simple flow. I'm going to say, what is your name, right? And I'm just going to like say that. And then we're going to see, like, again, listen, capture user reply again. And I'm just going to duplicate this block so we can use it multiple times. And then I'm going to say, what is your name? And I'm going to ask for their email. What is your name and email? And the best thing is, if I come back here you can select entire user reply, or you can select entities also, right? So entities, what can we add here? We can add, create an entity, we can add name, right? And as you can see, you have the data type of name, number, email. I'm just going to create name, create entity, and again we are going to come back here, create another entity which is going to be email, so that users always are inputting the right email, and we are already verifying that. So I'm just going to say user email, right? And one thing, if you'll see, like, I always type in camel case. Again, if you don't know what that is, you don't need to know, but like just like a better way to write variable names. Automatically reprompt if they don't enter an email. Yes, I don't want them to listen for any other triggers. I technically just want them to input email. So that means when I switch this off, in case someone asks, I want to talk to a customer, the AI will not know. It will just keep asking for email. So again, that's my preference. You can obviously, like, put something else. Here is another option, no reply. If they don't input anything for some time, please enter your email, else the chat will end. Right? So if someone has like abandoned this, or like, again, like, they are not using this, or they have forgotten about that this chat was also existing, they will get a notification of that. And we do all of this. Now, once we have all of this, you can see that I still have Akshat written here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add curly braces. As you can see, let me just zoom in a bit. I've just added curly braces, and I'm going to write name here, right? And here too, I'm just going to change this into take this, and here simply, as you can see, we're just going to select the variable. All the variables are stored in like the Voiceflow mega memory, and then we can just refer them anywhere in the whole flow. Once all of this is done, I can technically, hopefully, test this out, right? So what I'm going to do is click on send, and you can see they'll ask for API key and everything else. They are not asking for name, and I need to check why that is. And again, I'll just click this, and then technically now they're going to ask for name, API key, everything else. I'm not going to ping the API key because I want to just test. Let's see, because again, I have to copy and paste stuff. So take this up, connect this thing here, right? What is your name? What is your email? And technically run this. Let's see. It can come out as an error, but that's fine. I'll show you how to deal with those errors also. What is your name? I'm just going to type action, right? And then for an email, did it get? And one thing that you will see with Voiceflow is that, yeah, perfect. It takes a second to determine that it's a name, and then I'm just going to say a@a.com, and it might see that this is not a right email, right? So it looks like your email provided is incomplete, right? So I'm just going to do the right one, and I can input a@a.com, and technically now it should trigger this thing. Now, if everything worked right, I should finally see something here. As you can see, I've got a@a.com, right? But I have not got the name, right? The name apparently did not come right. So let's see what happened here. Let's see what happened in here. And now I will actually like to show you one more option which is available in Voiceflow. Every time you're testing stuff, like right now, I think because we were testing within internally, a transcript might be generated or not. And like you can see, like, these are all the transcripts being generated till now. It's the same one in a single chart. I can select debug messages, and any one time your user says that we found an error, you can see where they found the error actually, right? As you can see, like, it captured the email properly, right? But here, when it was capturing the name, right? Let's see when it captured the name, it took the name, entity captured, capture name, and then the user has provided, however, the requirement is to full name, both first a prompt necessary to collect the missing information. As you can see, it technically needed it to reprompt, but AI did not reprompt. And it started like, because there is no reprompt set, skipping. So you can see where the error happened, because it did not send me the name back, right? And the reason behind that is not technically that it was not able to define my name. It's like the way LLMs work is Indian names are not super captured very well, right? So again, you have the reprompt available here, right? And you can say like, please enter your name again or something like that. But what I would say is, instead of name, always just capture the user reply. And the reason behind that is very simply, people's names are very different. If I'm putting like a very Indian name, Akshas is like not an English name, so LLMs are super biased, remember that. And that's the reason that I've never been able to get them my name, right? So again, I'm just going to save my whole reply to name, and I'm just going to make this username and add this and make this red and create this variable. Once this is done, what I have is the whole thing. And technically now, if I test this thing, I will be able to see the whole thing available, ready. Let's test and see, hopefully works. Okay, what is your name? Akshat. And technically a@test.com, so we know exactly if it is coming, right? And then perfect, it's triggered, and technically I should see, still not able to see the name, right? Then it means that some issue is there with the API call, right? So let's see what, oh yeah, it's the same. I did not change the variable, right? So remember that, guys, whenever you are doing all this stuff, remember to change the variable name also. We just still had the old one, and we're going to do this. Let's try final test, fingers crossed. It should work. Again, it will work definitely. So we're going to come here, and we're going to say Akshat, and we're going to say a@test2.com, and then all of this CYM and everything else, right? And then again, could you please confirm that it is, there is an email typo? Yes, could be there. So right, a@abc.com, right? Let's say this. Because it's an entity, you get all the reprompts and everything, and then technically this is captured. Perfect. Akshat a@abc.com. Now the only thing is, I don't get it why we are getting curly braces also there. Again, can I get rid of them? And let's see if, like, again, because Voiceflow has just updated. Here the issue is this, right? So I don't need this anymore. So I can just get rid of this, and because, so you can see there's a small color change there, right? As soon as I select a variable, so if I select something as a input, it automatically becomes blue. So that means I don't need to input those curly braces. I was just doing that because I was referencing to the variable. So I can just have that and it will work. Perfect. Now, let's say in case it fails, you can obviously select like an option. In case the data is not captured, you can say like failure as a path mode and say, sorry, we failed. And I say the API call did not work. Please try again or something like that, right? Again, if it is success, you can then again, obviously once the user has input all the details, you can then go ahead and say, awesome, we have got all your details, perfect, right? And then you can just have that. So again, super simple stuff. You can do like a lot of these things and then just run with that, right? Perfect. So you have the API call. We know how to utilize an API. Now the only thing that's left here is to put all of this together in a single chain so that we actually have something as a travel agent rather than all these random blocks that are going here and there, right? And then we're going to talk finally about functions and JavaScript and custom actions. Okay, so let's start working around and setting this whole flow up, right? And we're going to try to make all of this in a single place. So let's start. We're going to take a start, and the first thing that I want actually my users to see is technically just information about different cities, right? So we are going to bring this up here, connect this whole thing, and then again just connect and drag this, right? And I technically would want to start with a message and say, welcome to Dream Planners to Dream Travel Company, please select a city to get started, right? So technically they can just get started with the city, select something and then go from there. So what I'm going to do is remove this, delete this, come back here, press this, and then voila, right? Once you get to here, welcome Dream Travel Company, they'll be able to select a particular city and get more information about it, right? And then we already have this connected with a couple of things, X, Y, Z. Again, I'm just going to delete this particular thing also. We don't need this. We don't want to we don't want this particular option also. We're just going to take this. And based on the city that they select, I technically want the next step to be about, and this is our travel prompt. I'm just going to do a bit of cleanup. Give me a second. Perfect. Let me just show you how I rearrange this. It's super simple. We'll just simply start with a simple ask to the user what kind of city they want to travel to. Most of our stuff is just going to be again for Mexico. Again, I'm just I've just connected it to go forward. And then again, what kind of a trip are you planning? Based on that, we'll decide what kind of output to give them. What is their budget for the trip? What is your name? What is your email? And then based on that, we're going to send out the data. And finally, based on the budget that they have input, we are going to give them an option, right? But there's still one more thing that I would like to add technically, right? Again, I want to technically also get some kind of information, and that's where something called functions come in, right? Functions are literally one of the best things where you can utilize a lot of amazing stuff created by people, right? So as you can see, there is an Airtable function. So if I want to get data from Airtable, I can bring this here. I have again Notion, you have Airtable to create a record. So instead of also using the API, you can use this and create a record and input all the details on what you want from a detailed perspective, right? But we're going to use something super simple. We are going to use a function which takes data from an Excel sheet and brings that here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on create a function. And then as you can see, there are multiple options of what you can create and everything else. I'm just going to import a function that I already have. And I'll just show you also where you can find that. Google Sheet Voiceflow function, right? And then just let me so this is again pull from Google Sheets, right? And then again I also have a whole video on that that's available there. So how to pull data from Google Sheets, and then this is you can just download the function and go from there, right? I already have this downloaded, so I just have to come here, click on import, right? And then I can just take the file, open that, and import one function. Now, as soon as this function is input, you get all these available details, right? So you have the variable where the content is going to get stored, what is the output variable look like, what are the other parts and everything, right? So come back to the workflow, and then very simply, I have this function part here. I've just input let's say someone wants some information, so I've gone and changed the prompt that every time someone has information about Mexico, tell them about Mexico, some 3 beautiful things, and also tell them about the cost and details of the trip. I come to this function, and then very simply I'll select pull from Google Sheet, and here I will input the values that are required. So as I have the sample Google Sheet available, I'm just going to take this, copy the link, right, and then paste this here. Then again, the range is going to be this sheet 1, and then the value. This is where you need a Google API key, right? I already have a Google API key. So I'm going to do that. If you want to know how to get a Google API key, just Google it up and you'll be able to figure out how to create a project and do all of those things. Again, I'll input the value outside of this video so that again I don't need to share that and edit everything. And then I'm going to store all of this content that we pull from the Google Sheet here. Okay. Once that is done, and like, let's say that is a success, I can just technically connect this to the particular block. And what I'm going to do is delete this from here and connect that back into this space. So I'm just going to connect that back. Or what I can do is, instead of like going through all that trouble, I can just initiate that here itself. So I can just keep this here, remove this thing because I want to fetch the data and it's something that is not going to be shown to the user. I can just pull the data at the start of this, right? So pull from Google Sheet, right? Again, and then I have the description and everything. I can even, if you want to change the name of the function, like just for better stuff and all, you can do that. You can rename this and everything else. Again, we are not going to do that. We are just happy to have this and utilize this. And you can have, like, again, as I told you, like you have multiple other options of getting different functions, so you can do that, right? So once this is there, and then again, I don't want my flow to fail also in case we are not able to fetch, let's say the API key expired or something like that, the agent should keep working and it should just keep going ahead like this, right? Perfect. So now we have the data, and based on this data, we have the function ready, we have the information, and every time it will go ahead and fetch these details. So right now we just have details about Mexico. So again, this is not going to be super crazy, but I'll show you that as a demo. Perfect. Let's test this out, right? So again, I'm just going to click on test your agent, and hopefully fingers crossed that all of this works, right? Again, welcome to Dean Travel Company. I'm just going to select like, get more information about Mexico, and then now I should get like a response. And also I am looking forward to like, get the budget about this, right? So there are 3 beautiful things about Mexico, and then let's see how much it responds with about Mexico and provide trip details. First of all, like, this looks so great that you are finally getting the prompt done, and then you get, travel destination details, and then again, obviously like, minimum spend required, contact person John Doe, visa processing time 12 days. This is all coming from our input from the Excel sheet. Again, that's great. You get everything from the Google Sheet, come back here, and all that can process. So this is again one of the most beautiful things about functions, is that you can find like a lot of them available already, right? So you'll have your resources and templates on Voiceflow, right? They have like a ton of these things where you can use them and build your own stuff also and share that with the community. Do that. Voiceflow is one of the best things with Voiceflow is the community that it has. And so yeah, just go ahead and do that. Again, just a small call out to the team. Perfect, right? So again, all of that is done. Now we have technically our whole flow ready and we are ready to publish, but there is one super cool thing that I still want to showcase to you, right? And that's obviously JavaScript is like, again, simply like, again, we don't have like a lot of requirement for JavaScript here, right? But let's say like, in case, let's say you were like, using this for writing some kind of a code, right? We can technically just ask ChatGPT to write us a lot of code that is required, right? So for example, in case I want to try, let's say you have a specific number of people that can come and travel on a single place. So let's just use ChatGPT to just like, write a single piece of code, right? I just wanted to write a super single line of code, write a single line of code to make sure a number is divisible by 4, right? In JS. So the only reason that I'm doing this is like, to utilize the JS module, right? You are probably going to use this in a bit more complex thing. So every time, like, let's say we get this kind of a response, right? So if it is divisible, right? And then you get paths, right? So you have path 1, path 2, everything, right? I want to say that if it is divisible by 4, so let's say you are selling a group package, and every time you need to know that the number, whatever the user is inputting, the number of people they are traveling, it should be at least by 4. So 4 people. So 8 people can travel, right? But 7 or 6 or 5 people can't travel. Let's say that's a requirement, right? And if it is, return true, right? So if it is, let's return true, and if it is not, then we can like, return something else and everything, right? And then if this is there, console.log, and you can see like, or using an arrow function. Make it simplified, and instead of true, return group package, or return no group package, right? So we can also ask ChatGPT to just change the code and say like this, right? Again, this is perfect, right? So this code technically can check the divisibility, and based on this will return either group package, right? So that is group package or no group package. Now what does that mean? So whenever I add a path, I can say group P, right? And then I can say group package, and then I can say no group package as another path. Based on what I get as a response of the input, I have different paths available here. Default and failure are always there because they are just basic. But let's say I just want to test this out. So I can say capture user reply. And here, instead of this number, it needs to be like a variable, right? So we need to have some kind of let's say number of days. I created a variable where you can capture the number of days, right? So you have number of days, and then again, this will be again number of days, right? So this is a variable that we have. And if the number of days is divisible, we get that, right? So let's see. So we're just going to capture the user reply, right? And I just want to put this here and capture this and select user reply, right? And then on the last reference, we can come here, click here, and we should train the agent also. Give it a couple of seconds. Again, so ChatGPT was making it too complex. Very simply, just made it number of days is equal to 4, return group P, and then I can just do an else if required. But again, if it is else if, it's obviously we can just remove that and say that that's not required as a path. So if the package is within 4 people, we can do that. Again, technically, we are not going to use this in the flow right now. But again, if you want it as an example, I'm going to leave this here as a part of the template so you can utilize this. But again, you can do a lot with JavaScript. Whenever you do something complex and stuff, you will probably need it a bit more. Perfect. That's there. Then finally, I want to technically talk about custom actions. But before I come to custom actions, I just have to show you something that will lead us to the custom action process here. So let's come to that. Let me just open Visual Studio Code and showcase this back. Perfect. So again, I have like a whole setup here where I have different extensions present, right? So what are custom actions, right? Custom actions are like this beautiful thing which allow you to render something outside of Voiceflow or like a JavaScript code within Voiceflow chat or outside something, right? So what I've done is I've created a simple extension, right? And again, I've used ChatGPT to create the whole thing again. So we have a whole video here where we can create a custom action, right? Again, and you can go through that, right? But what we're going to do here is very simply, we're going to come back here. And there is a step that I have created. Let me just show that to you, right? And then again, perfect. Okay, so I have a step here where we are going to Pixabay, right? This is the Pixabay website where we are going and getting free videos and images and everything. And they have an amazing API where technically every time someone enters the travel city name, so instead of city name, this will be like again travel city name, right? Let me just change that and travel city. And then technically I want to pull out some kind of a video or image about that. Now, once I get that, you see here, there is a capture response, right? So this is used when you are getting some kind of a response from the API. And let me just run this so you can see how this works, right? So let's say I'm going to put Mexico, right? And we'll technically get some kind of a random example. You see, we get this kind of a whole response where we get this all number of stuff. But I don't want all of this. I just want the first video that is coming, right? Again, I just want the first basic video that is coming, this URL, right? So if you can come here and see, this is the capture response where I've written response.hits, which is this. And again, this will differ for every API. And bracket 0, which is like, it's an array. So this is an array, right? Again, and this is from an API perspective, this is an array. Select the videos, right? So videos, whichever is the first video, so videos and the URL of that video, and store that in an image URL. Why am I doing that? Very simply so that I can utilize this in the next part, right? So again, I get this from process. Now you will be actually, this is too complex for us. Don't worry, I've got you. I've got a simpler website which can technically allow you to figure this out on which variable you want to output. So let's say I've copied and pasted the whole Pixabay details. As you can see that so much information has been copied. But what you can do is you can just whichever part you want to copy. So let's say I just want to copy video and I want to copy the first video dot large. I can come here, right? And I can copy this particular path. You see this? I can copy this path to clipboard. This website is called jsoncrack.editor, right? So I can just copy this video as a URL. So I can come here, copy this, and as you can see, this is exactly the same thing. So here, this is if I just press again, I space this here, and this is the same thing. Instead of root, you have to change it to obviously response, right? And then everything stays same. At the end, you just have to add the URL. And this is probably one of the most coolest things you can do with JSON Crack. So you don't have to technically worry about all those things. You can use that as you want. And this is you can see the URL and you can use this for all your stuff if you have not used this before. Perfect. Let me just close this. Awesome. Come back here and we're storing this in an image URL. Now, why am I doing this? Very simply because I want to show you how an extension works, right? And then I have another option here where I've set a variable and I'll again explain you as you can see, there are multiple conversations here. Till now, all our prompt engineering has been done in very simple steps, right? What I've done here is I've added a create an itinerary and reply in JSON only. This AI has to reply me in a JSON. It is going to create an itinerary for travel city. Let me just add that. right? So, and if travel city and days, we are going to ask the number of days that they are traveling for, and we're going to change this again to city name to city travel city, right? And then again, I told it that as a user, go ahead and do this. Then I've gone and added, like, as an agent, you are going to respond that, this is a complex stuff, right? Because I wanted to define a JSON. I've already created a beautiful itinerary. The agent is responding to the user. This is all as a pretend conversation between an LLM and a user. And then take the following URL and add it to the itinerary. Then it will say I've added it to the itinerary. And then finally I've asked it how to respond. The agent says that I've responded it, and then everything. I can also add, like, every time you want to add this, you can click on message pair and you'll get an agent and a user response which you can reply on. So I'm just going to get rid of this. I just need this at the end, and then based on this, all the variables, if I input that, I'll get the final video that I need as a response. Okay, perfect. So this will respond in a JSON. Now what do I do with that JSON, right? I've got a JSON, and then I'm going to run this JSON here. So this JSON is going to be part of my extension. So these custom actions, and let me just, like, also show you some documentation on this so you can understand what custom actions mean, right? So custom actions are like this beautiful place where you can render a lot of stuff, right? So you can, like, render like a credit card or shopping option, or you can render a form, you can render a lot of other things, right? And they have like a decent amount of documentation on that, but the goal is to create some kind of small mini apps. So we're going to take this JSON, put it here, and then run it as a path, and then just showcase those details, right? Now I'm going to put this somewhere just before our budget part, right? Because again, before the budget, I want to showcase some stuff, right? And I'm going to run this and technically just add that. Now this is easy step, right? You just name the action. So you'll take a custom action, right? And I have a whole detailed video on how to use custom actions. I'm going to link both of them here. But again, ext itinerary, right? I'm just going to, like, this is the name of the custom action that you will have to define as a JavaScript. And then action body, I'm just going to technically add here a JSON value, which is the JSON that I've just generated, is plan JSON, right? So you see this, set plan JSON to plan JSON. You have this as an output variable. I'm just going to define that in the action body here. Okay, and that's it. We are not going to do anything else. We're just going to delete this and keep this ready. Now comes a bit more complex part, which will, like, custom actions. Every time you are using it for the first time, you might feel like a bit overwhelmed. Don't be, right? Again, very simply, if you see here, this is the itinerary extension that it looks. Okay, this is a simple extension. And again, not to make this video another 1 hour additional, I'm just going to explain this to you very simply. We are just defining an extension, right? Naming it, and then writing type as effect. There are two types that are available in the custom action response, and I will show you both of them here. Effect and response. Now what is effect? Is very simply something that you want to render outside the chat agent, right? That's effect. And then very simply, I'm just going to say match trace.type, which is extension.itinerary, extension.itinerary, and everything else. Now why am I explaining you this code and not writing this? Because very simply, I did not write this code, right? I use ChatGPT to make sure that, I will always give it as a sample. This is an extension that does this. Can you create another extension in the same logic doing XYZ, right? And that's all I do. Now what it is going to do is, it's going to take my input, right? It's going to take the data and then render it. It takes this particular input of the video URL. If the video URL exists, just render it in an iframe, and that's it. That's technically what it is doing. It will also take the day itinerary and render that itinerary also, right? And as you can see, it's taking all of this information from the payload. So when a custom action is triggered, right? Let's bring you back here. When a custom action is triggered, you will see this is the action body. Whatever you are sending in the action body is actually getting triggered as a trace.payload. So trace.type will have this, trace.payload.name is this, or XYZ. Trace.payload has all these details, the JSON, the name of the action, and everything else, right? So we are just rendering that. The only thing then you have to do is, finally, if you come to the end of the file where I have my action displayed, right? So this is the simple variable where you can copy and paste stuff, right? And I'll show you this in a second also on how to get this. But let's test all of this out in one shot, right? So let's come back, and to actually send this or integrate this with someone and to publish this, we'll come to settings, right? Now we'll test all of this in one shot, right? But before that, we need to use integration, right? How do you actually publish the agent, right? So as you can see, this is their new beautiful agent, which has all the details, right? And here you can come here and just copy paste this code, right? So confirm and copy code, And once I confirm and copy, you can see I have pasted this code already, right, available here, and I've added extensions. As you can see here, I have already copied and pasted my code and added extensions, right? So the extension name is itinerary extension. I also have a custom style sheet, which is extension.css. Now again, we are not going to get into that because that's already, they have removed it. This was an old feature, so we can technically get rid of that also. I'm just going to keep this for simplicity. But what we can come here is we can change the color here, right? So I don't like this color, right? And again, if you do, great. I'm going to switch to another color, and then based on that, you can also change everything else. You can say this is not your AI agent, this is travel AI agent, right? And let's plan a trip, right? And all of those things can do, and then you can add an image. So let's pick up some image from our, let's pick up the image of Rome, and we can upload that, and then that image gets shown there rather than anything else. And again, we can do like a lot of stuff. You can, instead of saying test your agent, you can say like, travel buddy or something like that. You can change the placeholder text also, this message thing, which was again not possible before. You can change this to like say, where would you go, where will you go next, right? And then you can put like, so again, this is like all just good stuff. Again, I can remove the footer text, or in case you want to change the footer text, I can say created by Akshat Baheti and put that there, right? Perfect. So generated AI, check for double accuracy. I don't want that. I know it's obviously it's an AI agent. I want to like, you can say, put the URL of powered by Voiceflow. You can remove that. That's completely up to you, right? And then again, all these beautiful options and colors come here, right? And everything gets changed, and you can change the color and like, do. Another thing that you can do, which I love to do, is change the font to Poppins. I love Poppins as a font, so I'm just going to take that, right? Another thing is, I don't want the chart interface to be a widget. I want it to be embedded. So widget is something that looks like this, right? This is just right there, right? Or I can choose to embed. If I do embed, you can't see here. So when you are changing all of these things, keep it as widget. When you want to, just go ahead and switch it to embed and everything else. Again, voice input and voice output, we don't want to do that right now, so I'm just going to declare that off. We don't anything want as a chart, and that's it. And this looks pretty damn good, right? Like again, really good. We have everything ready. So what we can do is, let's go ahead and test it out. Before testing it out, you have to always publish it. We have not published this agent till now. Until it's published, nobody outside your workspace can actually see this. So once you click publish, this will get published to the world, and then anyone with a link and like that particular code can access your agent and utilize it, and then integrating it on any website is just as simple as like literally just copying and pasting this particular code. Okay. Now again, obviously I have like a couple of other things additional which are not required at all. They have all changed this. I don't even need this extension.css style. Get rid of that, and I'll show you how it looks with that and without that. So let's just come here and refresh this thing. Perfect. After a couple of refreshes, it got loaded, and then you can see this is a bit here and there because I have like a custom extension thing all going on. But let's say I press on get more information. I get more information, and then I have like a style sheet also going on. So you see that the response is in purple, and this is all in pink. So again, I'll remove that and see how it looks, right? But this is looking much better. We are getting all the information in a single place, right? And finally, you can see this agent coming through, and I'm just super happy to see this, right? Again, it took a decent amount of time. I don't even know how much time this has taken total, because we are going to edit this a bit after this, and then I'm just going to say I want to travel with friends to relax, right? And this is where it's asking about friends and family and everything else. And then what is your budget for the trip? I'm just going to write $30,000, right? Again, I know like I've taken some crazy amounts here, right? So I hope this is working. If it's not connected, we'll go back and check what's happening, but does not seem to be loading. Let's just check what is there with the budgets, right? So come back here. Got it. It ran something. I'm just going to write what's the name, Akshat, and then what is your email, a@a.com. I just always use that as a steady email. It's now triggering an API call, I believe, right? And then based on the API call, it should technically get the response. And unless we run into some issues with the customer actions or something, we'll see. Right? So there's no itinerary detail available. There's no video available also, right? And we'll see what happens, right? So again, that's probably like the custom action became an issue, but the flow ran perfectly well. I'm still happy, right? So we have got all of this. I'll just check what happened. Why did we not get a video output or something? And then custom actions, that's why again, using them like takes a lot more time. And also you'll get into like a ton of issues. The JSON is there, and I'll obviously want to see like, what the response comes out to be. And let's see, let me just do a deep dive. So I can come back here, and then whenever you want to do this, go to transcripts, and you will be able to see again, this is the demo user. This is something that I've already rendered, everything else. So let's see what we are getting as an output. Where did we go wrong? Custom action did get triggered, and we have the proper JSON also as, like, the URL came, else came, but this is the URL that came from here as an image URL, and I think that's where a bit of a problem happened. But still, yep, parsing JSON, you see this custom action triggered, but parsing JSON object is not valid, right? So it triggered that, but because it did not come out as a valid JSON, that became a problem, right? So maybe we just need to check this once again. Perfect. So again, I figured the issue out. It was such a stupid one. Took me a long time. Very simply, you can see the video and everything else being rendered, right? And the activities and stuff. And again, you get it in different tabs and verticals and everything else, right? Again, all of this comes from this part 2 here. And the only thing that we were missing is one small part where you have to change the variable and do it as a stringify. So test.json, json.stringify. And this is where you need the JavaScript step. Again, technically this was not used in my previous example, but again, now it's needed. Perfect. With that, we have completed all the steps. Everything that is mentioned in Voiceflow is covered here again, and every step that you need to require to build complex and amazing agents, go ahead and do that. In addition to that, I just want to say, if you're watching till here and really like the video, please go ahead and like this video. It will really help me out a lot, and hit down the subscribe button if you want to watch more content like this. And feel free to join the community. Again, it's literally open now today, this video. So all the initial members get a lot of perks. So go ahead and join this. And if you do, I would love to see you, and looking forward to catching up, talking more. Bye.